Well, hello there, howdy how are you doing today? We're looking at the Bren light machine gun. And I've actually really come to enjoy the light machine guns in this game. They're just so damn strong, and they combat so much rubbish in this game. And I think Bren is no exception to that. It's probably not my favourite light machine gun. I just find the Lewis to be tier 1. MG15 is pretty close behind that, but has slightly different roles. And the Bren is almost like a sniper at times. It can be really good on some maps, but it can be proper dog on others. Obviously, it is a light machine gun with extremely high damage, has quite a slow rate of fire, and is not super accurate just because of how big that recoil is. However, you will find it's fairly manageable if you are patient with your shots. You can sometimes suffer against snipers who have got your big ass in their sights, so you have to be wary of that. But I would say that Gustav cannon, maps with long lines of sights, are extremely good for this weapon. Now, when using this class, obviously you want to play a bit more passive because of its high damage and the fact that it is pretty damn good at range, even if you do have that high recoil. The kick is very manageable because it's very predictable, and the fact that it's got such a low rate of fire means that you don't actually have to worry about, you know, the fact that it can fire faster, if that makes sense. So, like, if you could fire faster than it already does, you'd obviously have a gun that would have you looking at the ceiling or into the sky because of how quick it fires and how quickly you want to fire it off. It's quite slow, so I almost just act like this is a semi-automatic gun and just play quite slow with the trigger finger, meaning that it's very manageable, and at range, if you can get yourself into good cover and good positions, you absolutely dominate people at range, as you can see in some of these clips. That's not to say that you can't handle yourself up close and personal. Because of that high damage, it is going to dispatch with someone in 2 shots. I think maybe if you get close enough, it will hit them in 1 to the head, because it is extremely, extremely harsh on people. It is that damaging. And I probably recommend switching up your reflex sight to something that's a little bit easier to work with, like the ones that I do in some of these later clips. As far as divisions go, I would say infantry is the best one, purely for the fact that you get that extra attachment that's going to help this gun be a bit more manageable. Mountain is good, obviously, for the fact that if you are caught out by some UAVs or some streaks, you can hide yourself. And if you're playing a bit more passive, you don't have to worry too much about some of the attachments that you might find, which I'll get onto a little bit in a few seconds. Armoured is something I'm going to give a special shout out to. I wouldn't say it's the best division, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily a great division, because although it helps almost give a steroid effect to the LMGs in general with the bipod, I wouldn't say the division's that good for these kind of weapons overall. It is literally that bipod you want to use the armoured for. Now, if you haven't used the bipod on an LMG, it basically speeds up and makes everything a lot better. So your hip fire becomes laser sight. It is literally the size of a few pixels, so you can hip fire people across the map. The reload speed gets increased dramatically. The recoil becomes non-existent. It is absolutely god-awfully amazing. It really is once you've got the bipod on it. But the fact that you have to put the bipod down pretty much means you're locked into one single part of the map almost. And for me, personally, I don't like doing that. I'm not really here to camp, and I think the point of some of these videos is to kind of give you a style in which to succeed with this weapon. Although the armor definitely makes this gun extremely usable, and it makes all LMGs so damn good, and I think what's kind of cool is the bipod can be put anywhere. You can put it on the floor if you really want to. I don't think that's necessarily the point of this kind of series. It's kind of giving you that option to go on nice long healthy streaks and be able to dominate maps and not necessarily sit in your spawn or on one spot and you know, camp it out with something. Because I've done that before. I've set up a bipod and then I might not see anyone for 3 or 4 minutes, and that's a bit pointless, isn't it? It can be very useful, but I don't think, as a for the practical nature, I don't think armored is really going to be too much benefit for you. Attachments, I'll quickly rattle through these. Quickdraw is very good, but maybe not necessary if you're playing a more passive style. Grip is absolutely necessary because it just helps maintain and manage that recoil a little bit more. Reflex sight is nice because I'm not the biggest fan of the eyesights. They're not bad, but they're not great. And the fact that this gun, in general, obscures half your screen with this big magazine that sits on the top, it's always nice to have something that's a little bit clearer for you, especially if you're trying to look around the map very quickly. Steady aim, pointless, not going to need it. If you want to hit fire, you might as well just get the bipod out. FMJ is probably great, but I think this gun already has quite a nice bullet penetration. I think the only reason you need to use armored is if you are using using FMJ, is if you're using the armored division for that bipod, because then you don't necessarily have to worry about attachments like Quickdraw or grip or the reflex sight, because you're literally using a bipod that makes this gun absolutely god tier. But it's simply the fact that you sacrifice some really good perks to basically not be able to move ever, which I guess if you're playing super passive with this gun, not really the biggest deal, but I like to at least move around once in a while with this gun and not necessarily sit still. I mean, passive doesn't necessarily mean camp, it just means playing a bit further back, playing a bit less of an active role, and being a bit smarter and about your choices of movement. ACOG, I think the recoil's too high on it to be viable. Extended mags is good, but I don't think it's worth it when you couple in some of the other attachments. I think if you were going to use the armor division, extended mags and FMJ would probably be a very good way to go on this weapon. But again, I've discussed how I feel about sitting back and doing nothing with a bipod. Rapid fire, it will increase your rate of fire, which is nice. Again, another attachment actually to consider when using the armored division for that bipod, because again, you're not going to need quick draw, grip, etc, etc. So another one to go with, but only with armored. And basic training, I don't think there's really much to put on this that's actually going to be good for you, apart from lookout. Rifleman could be okay if you're not really a big fan of the Bren at close range. You can go with a submachine gun, or espionage if you're finding you're tagging up a lot of people but not getting the kill, could be something to consider. Anyway, this is a very nice LMG. I've given you a way to use it in a more practical nature. If you're happy to just sit there and camp, maybe if you are using it as a last resort class that forces you to kind of sit in your spawn, you're on one of those maps that is very spawn lock heavy and your team's stuck and you can't get out of there, but you don't feel like leaving the game, maybe stick an armored class on with something like rapid fire, FMJ and extended mags, maybe put primed on there. So there you go, there's another basic training that you could test out, is primed just for that extra attachment. I don't think the flinch is going to be too much to worry about. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, obviously do drop a like rating. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, subscribe, and I will see you very soon. Peace out.